Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Hour. It's Friday. We made it through yet another week. What a crazy week this has been. I'm assured by Chrissy Mayer on Twitter that I'm going to have to shoot my own foot off from having diabetes at any moment. I I spilled the beans on one of the most popular YouTubers of our moment, and have been talking to his employees for the last couple of days about all the ways in which I was right. And you know what? It has just been a little hectic this week, a little unexpected, if you will. But I am really glad to be here for happy hour, and I think we've got a great video. I was so pleasantly surprised to find the particular video that we're going to watch today, and I will tell you about that in a second. But happy hour is a stream that I do on Fridays at youtube.com/actively unwoke, which is my second YouTube channel. I'm also streaming right now on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, Gitter, Facebook. I don't know, maybe some other places too. But this is a time where we watch full form woke training videos or educational videos, things like that. It might be a college lecture, it might be a teacher professional development opportunity. It could be absolutely anything as long as it comes from the woke progressive left. And the reason that we do this is we're trying to understand them. We're trying to understand them and reverse engineer what they're doing so we can better fight it. Because if you do not understand something, you cannot effectively fight back against it. And sadly, because they mostly have the attention spans of a Fruit Loop, many people who report on what is going on the woke left don't actually understand it because they don't listen to them. They don't watch the full form of their content. They only see the clips that show up on Twitter or on Fox News that are mostly taken out of context. And they think that that is the end all be all when it's so much worse than what they think it is. I firmly believe, and I don't think anyone can try to convince me otherwise, that people who watch Happy Hour on a regular basis understand more about what's going on the woke left than pretty much anyone else on the planet, to include all of the journalists covering it, to include anyone who works at Fox News, to include almost every single conservative influencer. You guys know more than everyone else. Just sit with that idea for a second. It'll start to freak you out after a while. I promise you that, but you really will come to the same conclusion that I do, that we're kind of effed if we don't start understanding this thing. So I try to make it fun. I try to make it engaging. I drink some beer. You are welcome to crack open a beverage if you want to as well. And we're gonna watch what's going on. And today, I think it's gonna be a good one. I know I say that every week, but I really do think it's gonna be a good one because today we are going to watch a video from amaze.org. Did you guys know that amaze.org has a whole parents YouTube channel? I didn't know this. I had no idea. So if you need a refresher, and we're going to watch a couple amaze.org videos. I have done several streams on my main channel about amaze.org. Amaze.org is an uber progressive organization that creates sex ed videos for elementary and middle schoolers. And we're going to watch a couple of those videos just because this video for parents is a little bit shorter. So I want to give you a nice full happy hour. Let me show you before we talk about this video for parents. Actually, why don't we just watch one of their videos that they created? And I'm going to start you guys off today with amaze.org. We're going to start off with probably the most wholesome video on all of amaze.org. And that's a good thing. This video is incredibly wholesome. It's got a catchy song. I just want to give you a sense for the type of company that we're going to be watching today. And we are going to watch, oh, hang on. It accidentally started before I wanted to click play. And this will just be a couple minutes long just to give you guys a feel for it. We're going to watch how the boner grows.
Well, I need to see what my life is about. As Martin Flounder figures it out. It sure feels funny to know I'm not alone, right on the money. Stands up on his own. Since I was little, he's always been my friend, but now my middle can beat me around the bend. Oh no, 'cause that's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows. Tell me I'm not alone. Out in the sand we make impressions where we're at might come in handy if you need to change a flag. Oh, my crazy compass is way out of control, and my equator grows another pole. Oh, that's how the boner grows. That's how the boner grows. It's not really They say it's normal. Each guy gets his own, so we've erected all these monuments in stone. That's how the boner grows. 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 So I'm never alone.
So that was That's How the Boner Grows. That is the most wholesome song on all of amaze.org. We're going to watch one more amaze.org video before we dig into the actual thing we're going to watch today. But I just wanted to, and I know I've watched that video a lot. Listen, you can't, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to show. That wasn't the one I wanted to show you. Hang on. This one. You can't deny that that's a catchy song, okay? I know everyone's going to have that song stuck in their head all night now, but that's the type of yes, we're going to watch the Penguin one too. We are. If you don't remember the Penguin one is another classic. We're going to save that for when we're doing our beer poll though. But what I find interesting about this is the same company that produced those videos for elementary and middle schoolers to teach them all about sex also has a whole parents channel. And wouldn't you know it, they have this video, how to talk to kids about gender. And the only description is a conversation with the author of Sex is a Funny Word and a sex educator. All right. I have a feeling this might be one of our more digestible episodes of Happy Hour, and I'm living for it, man. I'm living for it. Listen, amaze.org videos are cringy. They are sometimes shocking. They are awful. They occasionally have really wholesome moments, just like That's How a Boner Grows. And you just got to roll with it. We need to have some fun sometimes for Happy Hour, and that's what we're going to do today. So that is the video that we are going to be watching. But guys, of course, per usual, we've got a couple orders of business before we get to our video. Number one, I need you to mount that like button for me. We don't smash the like button on my channels. We mount the like button on the channels. I also need you to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Ring that bell. Do whatever the YouTubers, the influencers tell you to do. That would be really great. And also, I want to let you know that we are doing movie night this week in my supporter Discord. We are watching They Live at 8 p.m. on Sunday, which if you've never seen They Live, you need to see They Live. It is a classic. It is mandatory watch. It is, you have to do it. Come and join us in the supporter Discord. We're going to have a great discussion about this movie, and we're going to really enjoy our time. And if you've never seen it, it's got the longest fight scene in cinematic history. I promise you, it's really worth it. Come and watch They Live with us on Sunday in the supporter Discord. And of course, we've got book club coming up in a couple of weeks. We are having Unabomber book club because I never like to do things that are controversial. I like to keep it just really even keeled and, above reproach. So we're having Unabomber book club on December 3rd. We are reading Industrial Society and Its Future, Ted Kaczynski's manifesto. So you have plenty of time to get your copy, read up, join us for a discussion on December 3rd about this book, about this document, whatever you want to call it. And Listen, a lot of people say that he got a lot of stuff right. So I guess we'll see, won't we? Now, how you get into my supporter Discord is that you head over to activelyunwoke.com/support, and you can either sign up on my Patreon anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250 a month, depending on how much you like me on any given day or what kind of swag you'd like to get. I like Patreon because it has all the different levels to give people a lot of different options for support, which of course I really do appreciate. I also understand that not everyone likes Patreon. Some people are already on there. It works into their routine and that works out well. But if you're not on Patreon already and you don't really want to support them because sometimes they cancel people, you can head over to Locals and join us up there. That's going to be $5 a month, $50 a year, and that's going to actually get you access to the community I spend the most time in, interacting with my people. I have the best community on all of Locals. I'm completely convinced of this. No one can tell me otherwise. And if you do either of those things, you will get access to the supporter Discord and book club and 2 Zoom calls a week that we do that are private, that are unrecorded, that are just our time to talk about what we want to talk about without fear of being judged by the outside internet. And God knows I've had a little bit of judgment this week. And, I like retreating to my community. I think my community is the best. So come and join us on Locals or Patreon, and then we'll get you into the supporter Discord, and you can come and join us for movie night on Sunday. All right. Now, before we get started, as you know, this is happy hour, and so I'm going to pour myself a beer. But per our happy hour tradition, you guys get to actually vote on what beer is the first beer that I'm going to drink. And so I have 4 varieties. Don't worry, I'm not going to drink all 4 beers on the stream. This is just to give some options. Also, I like even things, and the beer rings come in 4. It's just the way it goes. So let me tell you about the beer that I just brought home from the beer store and bought. This one is dedicated to you. Not quite purple drink, but this is called Local Blue. This is from Kettlehead Brewing Company. I'm pretty sure they're in Maine. No, they're in Tilton, New Hampshire. I was wrong. And this is a blueberry ale. So, simple blueberry ale. If you've never had a blueberry ale before, blueberry ale is it's a great beer for women who think they don't like beer. It does taste like beer, but it also has like a nice essence of blueberry in it. So that might be a good one to start. Next up, Thanksgiving is coming up. And we've got an apple pie beer. This is called Apple Pie Scraper. This is from Night Shift Brewing. And this is an ale with apples, cinnamon, nutmeg, natural flavors, and milk sugar. Apple pie. Next up, we have another purple beer. And I'm pretty sure, I think I've had this one before, but I didn't remember. I think I have, though. It's called Blazing Love. And this is a blueberry cobbler pastry sour. I'm 60% sure I've had this before, but I also don't remember it. So even if I have had it, it probably didn't suck if I don't remember it. And this is from Blaze Brewing Company in Biddeford, Maine. And so blueberry cobbler. So we're going to call this cobbler, not to be confused with blueberry ale. Cobbler, blueberry ale. 2 different types of things. And then our last beer that you guys get to vote on today is going to be a coffee coconut porter from Pipe Dream Brewing. I love coconut stouts, coconut porters. Coconut and beer taste so good. I know it might sound a little weird, but it is one of my favorite combinations. So if you ever have a chance to try like a coconut stout, coconut porter, I definitely recommend it. It is one of my favorite types of beer to drink. All right, so those are our options, and I'm going to put the poll in the chat. And you guys get to decide which one I start with. And yes, Benjamin, it's funny you say that. There is actually a pecan pie beer. I've had it before. There are all sorts of pecan beers. They're like brown ales or nut ales or something like that. But they're really good. Pecan pie is so good. I hate IPAs. You will never see me have an IPA on happy hour. I'm really sorry about that. But I personally detest IPAs. I've only had a couple IPAs that I thought were good. And it's like IPAs are like the pissing contest of beer. I just don't understand it. To each their own, man. I like fruity beers. I like stouts. I like porters. I have my own thing. All right. So now while you guys are voting in the poll, I want to watch one more video from amaze.org and hang on to your hats. This is getting into the content with amaze.org that I think is going to be a little bit more saucy for us today. And this is a video called Expressing Myself My Way. Now remember, amaze.org is a company that makes sex ed videos that are used in schools all over the country for elementary and middle school students. All right? These are really used in school. This is no joke. So we're going to watch this. It's about 3 minutes long, and we will do the poll for the beer. And then we will get into our video from for today from amaze.org about how to talk to for parents specifically about how to talk to kids about gender. But just sit back and enjoy.
No matter how you're born, we each have a style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Ariana and Renee, they both are born girls. They go into their changing rooms. Ariana loves twirls. That's not for Renee. Pink will not do. All girls don't wear dresses, they wear pants too. Has Renee lost her mind? What's running through her head? Ariana can fix this, no is what she said.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've got to move. That's how you know you've got it right.
This is me, who I am. See me in full colors, me like no other. Originality.
No matter how you're born, we each have a style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Bryce and Jason, they both are born boys. They go into their changing rooms. Bryce jumps out with joy. Jason has a different idea. The sweater is where it's at. Bryce has to fix this. Here, try this or that. Wait just 1 second. Don't tell him how to dress. Ariana knows this. Only Jason can express.
This is me, who
Oh.
I am. See me in full
Julie,
colors,
wait,
me like
wait.
no other.
Hold on to that thought.
Originality.
No matter how you're born, we each have a style. I'll tell you in a while exactly what I like.
Darla and Charles, one girl and one boy. They go into their changing rooms. Charles is feeling coy. Others are thrilled with the look, but Charles is quite unhappy. Let's try this again. Yeah, this is snappy. Some are confused. They just don't understand. Charles, now Charlotte is certain. Ariana's her biggest fan. Some might keep their distance, but others will come around. Come on over, Darla. Show us what you found. Darla had something on, but is not quite convinced. She wants to try again, yet she still gives a wince. Nope, not right either. Why can't she decide? Sometimes it takes time, only she can find her stride. Darla presents an outfit. The new name is Darren. Now everything feels right. The person within he's sharing.
When you put it on, you do a little groove. You know you've got to move. That's how you know you've got it right.
This is me, who I am. See me in full colors, me like no other. Originality.
Here we have Skylar, born a boy or girl. Not interested in the girl look. Won't give the boy look a whirl. Skylar wants a new path, and it isn't one of those. This is a unique look from Skylar's head to toe.
When you put it
It's a non-binary
on,
look.
you do a little groove. You know you've got to move. That's how you know you've got it right.
This is me, who I am. See me in full colors, me like no other. Originality, who I am. See me in full colors, me like no other. Originality.
So what I particularly appreciate about that particular video is that it teaches kids that gender is just like changing your clothes. And it doesn't really it's just your clothes. It's just a creative expression of who you are. And if you just express who you truly are inside by changing your clothes, then you'll get all these likes on social media and you'll have all these friends. And it's normal, guys. It's normal for people to question and to try on different outfits. What could possibly go wrong with teaching kids in elementary and middle school that changing your gender is just like changing your clothes and putting on a new outfit? That is the company that we are watching today, ladies and gentlemen, except we are watching a video for parents about how to talk to their kids about gender. But first, we need to pour that beer. And I'm actually surprised, to be honest. I'm really surprised you guys went for the coffee coconut porter. I'm pleasantly surprised, though, because I'm excited about this beer. I thought one of those blueberries might get you. Blueberry probably split the vote between blueberry ale and cobbler. But let me get the coffee coconut porter out. Hang on. All right, and again, this is from Pipe Dream Brewing, and I'll show you the pour. It's going to be nice dark beer. A non-fruity beer for once. Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. If you're drinking something fun, let us know in the chat. Pipe Dream Brewing is a little, it's iffy for me. Sometimes I really like their beers. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, not so much. Let me see. Oh, gosh. You can smell the coffee, I'll tell you that. Really nice. Really nice. I can definitely taste the coconut. Well done, Pipe Dream Brewing. Cheers, everyone. I think I'm really going to enjoy this one. Okay, good choice. All right, guys, let's get this video up and running. Gosh, I'm still feeling a little under the weather. I think I'm coming down with a cold, so if I'm talking funny, I think it's just because I'm coming down with a cold, and I apologize. All right, mount that like button if you're ready to start happy hour for the week. We are watching from Amaze Parents, how to talk to kids about gender.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Amaze Live. I'm your host, Christine Coe, and I'm so excited to be here with my new friends, Corey Silverberg and Bianca Loriano. Hi, how are you guys?
Hi. All right.
You're hanging in there. What else can we do, right? Well, I'm so grateful for you guys taking the time out of your Friday. I know, some might say, what else would we be doing because we're all inside, but I know that it's a lot to come together and be ready to talk about all manner of professional things while we're dealing with what's happening in the world right now.
This was during the pandemic. It was 2 years ago.
It's been so fun, even just in the last few minutes before we hopped on this call, to kind of get to know you guys a little bit better. But I would love for you both to take a few minutes to tell our audience about your work, what you do separately, and then also what you do in collaboration, since you guys work together frequently.
Oh, captions. Sorry about that, Spirit Matter.
Sure. Hi, I'm Bianca Loriano.
There you go.
I use she and her pronouns as well as they and them. And I'm a certified sexuality educator with the ASECT, which is the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And I write a lot of curriculum, and I do trainings for adults and parents around a variety of different topics, targeting young people ages 7th grade and above. And I'm also one of those caregivers, chosen family members, trusted adults.
Wait. Did she just say that she's a professional sex educator that targets children 7 through 11? I'm pretty sure that's what she said. Hang on.
I'm that person that a lot of young people come to in my life for support. And I've been working with Corey for several years now, and it's been really exciting, and building curricula for his two.
Whatever. That was basically what she said, I think.
One of our main areas of focus.
Why do 7-year-olds need a sex educator?
So I'm also a sex educator. I'm Canadian, although I'm living in the United States right now. My first kind of area of work was actually specifically around sex and disability. But now for the past, I guess, like 10 or 12 years, I've been working on this series of kids' books. So these are books that are trying to kind of retell and reframe and redo sex education.
Why is a sex educator and comedian writing kids' books? This is perverse. We've got the one, Bianca is teaching sex education to 7-year-olds, and Corey is a comedian that has decided to start writing sex books for children. And I don't want to, you know what? I don't like to judge people based on their looks. I really don't. I don't think it's appropriate. But does Corey have a certain look about him? Does anyone think? I'm just going to see if you guys are on the same wavelength as me. Does Corey have a certain look about him that... Oh, did he say Canadian? Oh, sorry. Well, all the more reason. Canadians shouldn't be sex educators either. That makes far more sense, though. I was like, comedian? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Anyway, but my other point still remains. Does Corey have a certain look about him that we might find suspicious? Maybe I'm just making things up. Maybe I'm inferring. I don't know. Let me know what you think.
In a way that sort of decenters heteronormativity and decenters gender normativity, and trying to figure out a way to make books that include more of us. And so
see,
now
I wasn't
do
the
that.
only
I
one
spend a
who
lot of
heard
time with
comedian.
parents, and I train professionals, and I also get to work with people like Bianca. So we work on a lot of different things, including a lot of Bianca's work, which is, I mean, Bianca's worked with like kids of
I
all
would
ages,
not be
and I tend
surprised.
to
I'm not
these days
making
tend
any
to focus
accusations
more
or
on
anything.
younger
I'm
kids,
just saying.
so sort of between sort of 4 and 10,
What?
4 and 12. So then I get.
You're teaching sex to 4-year-olds? No, nothing to see here. We're just doing sex education for 4-year-olds. Nothing to see here. It's okay, guys. Don't worry about it. They're just 4.
Get to work with Bianca, and she tells me about TikTok. Basically, that's how that.
Oh, Bianca, you're going to have to give me a tutorial. Well, and then, so we are coming together in this conversation. Oh, and first I'll just say that Michelle Rockcliffe says, love Corey's books. I have them in my classroom and recommend them to my parents. Michelle, you'll be glad to hear that I've already sort of put Corey on the hook to come on for a Facebook Live when his next book comes out. So we'll get to that later. But, we're here to frame a conversation about how to talk to kids about gender. I think, it's so fascinating because I feel like I've seen a lot of parents either sort of alternately really embrace it and embrace that we have a new vocabulary and new words and new ways of talking about things. And then I see other parents just kind of like freak out and want to just, run the other direction. And so I want to start on this parent side because I feel like people can get very stuck about this topic. And some of that is maybe that they don't know really quite how to approach it. And also I want to encourage our viewers right now, if you have questions, drop them in the comments. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning, but Corey and Bianca are here to answer your questions. So please drop them in the comments for us. Anyway, so sorry, I was saying that I think a lot of parents get a little stuck because they're not sure how to talk about it. So then they just don't, even if they want to, right? Yeah. So, what are some of your key tips to help adults really reframe and open their thinking about understanding gender and how we want to communicate about it with our kids?
Who should go first?
I would first tell parents that gender is also something that they have as well, right? So often we think about talking to children about sexuality topics. One of the things that parents and adults don't always want to do is like share their own personal experiences, which is totally fine. And I think before getting into a conversation with a child around gender, thinking about like, what's your relationship to your own gender right now? And one of the prompts that I really love to use with parents and young people is think of a memory or an experience that's connected to your gender. So it could be like an early memory, it could be something that happened, and start there and think about, was it a joyful experience? What happened? Who was there? What were the smells? And really starting to—
what were the smells?
And look inside around.
What were the smells? I can't think of a single smell that I connect with my gender. Can anyone think of a smell that they connect with their gender?
Your feelings about your own gender before starting a conversation.
What I just want to ask the chat, what does anyone want to share feelings that they have about their gender in the chat? We're not continuing until someone shares feelings that they have about their gender. This is like an unofficial assignment. Does anyone have feelings they would like to share? What I remember about my gender is I didn't want to be a girl and I wanted to play sports with the boys. And my parents wouldn't let me because I was not a boy. And I feel like if I had grown up today, they would have transed me to be a boy because I wanted to play sports with the boys. Yeah, I guess men's cologne. Yeah, women smell pretty. Men oftentimes don't. Hellbound says his gender is Jägermeister flavored. What did the sports smell like, Carl? I don't know. I didn't get to play sports Because I didn't want to play with the girls. I wanted to play with the boys. Anytime I played on the girls' team, I got really bored.
Around gender first.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that I also agree is that sort of the first piece. I think that often we get stuck because kids will ask questions and we'll have this experience which is just like a record scratch or like just a catch in our throat. And it's complicated because we all have positive and also lots of negative experiences with gender that we don't get to think about. So for me, another thing, because often I'm thinking about the kind of stuff that's hard and negative maybe, like what I'm aware of is that I don't know anyone of any gender that doesn't have the experience of not meeting other people's expectations of their gender, right? Mm-hmm. We have this idea that there's people who like, well, binary gender fits, and then people who binary gender doesn't fit. But actually, the gender boxes, and there's more than two.
How many are there?
None of us fit those all the time. So that's another thing that I encourage people to think about. It's like, what are some examples of when you were a kid or today, when you have this feeling of not meeting other people's expectations of what they think your gender is? And that's, again, for kids who are constantly feeling like they're not meeting the expectations of their...
Why are we teaching kids that they have an obligation to conform to other people's expectations? Why is that something that was not what I was taught, I don't think. I was taught that it was a good thing to if you didn't conform to, if you didn't feel like you fit in, like that was okay. You were creative. You were like a weird kid, like whatever. Why are we teaching kids that it is their responsibility to conform to other people's expectations? And if they don't meet other people's expectations, they need to change their gender.
Their parents and of their teachers and of their friends. It's a really sweet and gentle way of getting into a conversation, because it's kind of a conversation on an equal footing, right? It's not, it's like, I'm gonna lecture to you. It's like, I actually have a lot of these experiences too. And of course, I wouldn't say with a young child that you're gonna unpack trauma necessarily. You're gonna wanna think about it like Bianca's saying, think about it beforehand, but then come with a story. Like when I was a kid, everybody thought girls could only do this, and I didn't know what to do, and no one, there were no third gender terms, etc. So to start with that, I think is important. And then for me with young kids, there's kind of two things, right? The first thing is that all kids should know that there's more than boys and girls, and they don't need to have a lecture about that. They don't need to know what all the other options are, but we're constantly being like, the gender binary is constantly like working on us. And boy, girl, male, woman, everything's split.
Hello.
And so just always sort of dropping seeds about, oh yeah, well, there's more than boys and girls. And some kids will be interested and want to pick that up and ask questions. A lot of kids won't at all. So that's number one. Just that there's more than boys and girls.
Dave 123R is actually bringing up a great point. Communism is all about conformity. That's why they're so obsessed with conformity. That's why. Oh my God, I hadn't actually thought about this before, Dave. They're teaching people they need to change their gender to better match what they feel inside, because they're conforming to that. They're conforming to the stereotypes. Wow. Corey's last name is Silverberg. Silverberg.
And that gender is something you get to name and you get to explore, and it's your personal experience. Right. So as opposed to, and this is maybe more technical than I get, but as opposed to sex assigned at birth, which is this label that someone else gave us, we were assigned male or female or something more complicated. Gender is very clearly a word that you get to choose. And then again, that's it. You don't need to necessarily go deep into that. Some kids will want to. But so those for me are the two things for parents to be thinking about. There's more than boys and girls. And gender is this thing that we actually all figure out all the time.
And what would be a simple way? So I think I'm glad you bring up this point, because I think a lot of parents get a little bent around the axle, maybe about worrying about that their kids are going to ask them too much, or that they don't have all the answers, or whatever it may be. So I think that it's really important to note that they may just say, okay, when you say, and move on. But what would be a simple response if you say, there are more than two genders, and then they say, What do you mean? What would be your sort of quick, brief response to that?
Well, first, I wouldn't say there's more than two genders. I'd probably just say there's more than boys and girls, because
Right, okay, yeah.
I'm doing this not for you. I know you know that, but again, I think that we get freaked out and we think we need this terminology, right? And we don't. The word
We don't need to
gender is
define
helpful
things.
for me. I don't know how helpful it is.
So if he says there's more than two genders, there's more than boys and girls, and a kid says, well, what are the other genders? Which I don't think would actually be like out of the realm of possibility for a kid to ask. And they go, well, they just more exist. These people think it's perfectly fine to have there be no definitions to things, no concrete terms at all. Are they going to tell them about bog gender or fae gender or deer gender or rat gender or people who believe that they're like an animal of some sort or like how are like it just makes no sense at all. DeCobb says it's the Madonna principle. In other words, look at me, I adopted a non-white baby, aren't I special? But in this case, hey, look at me, I got a gender change child. Yes, I think that there is a lot of Munchausen's by proxy going on. And isn't that, I mean, do you think it has something to do with the fact that the generation, like, okay, so I look at people my age, right? My age are the ones that are having like the kids now, right? Or like a little bit younger than me, but like we can agree that like, you know, kids that are growing up now came from people that were around my like late millennial or early millennials in general, right? So I got on the internet when I was like 15 years old. I don't remember a time before the internet really. I've always been online, but I never really got into internet culture, but I was still like, I think very much influenced by it. And I think that there's something to be said for the fact that, you know, people who grew up on the internet are probably much more prone to care about image because of the influencer bullshit. And I think that a lot of people use this as a status symbol in order to gain that clout that they can't get in any other way. And I think it's really sad. They are permanently screwing up their kids to get virtue points. Oh yeah, I was on MySpace. I had like a decked out MySpace. I had the best MySpace. Fun fact, I used to blog. I swear to God, this is true. I used to blog about politics on MySpace. Way back in the day. People don't remember this. MySpace used to actually have a really powerful blogging platform. And I wrote about politics. I was a staunch leftist on MySpace. And I would get about a quarter of a million views a month for blogging about my politics on MySpace. I was like always in like their number 1 or their top 10 of political bloggers. Man, MySpace was the best. MySpace had like the music when you came onto the profile. They had all those like templates. You can make it. It was very emo sometimes.
This for a 6-year-old and 5-year-old, but they know about boys and girls. So I would say there's more than boys and girls.
Exactly,
And
Connie.
said,
You remember.
I'd say, oh, well, gender is this thing. Or sorry, I would say, yeah, I guess I would say boys and girls are gender terms. And it's this thing that we get called these words as if there are only kind of two kinds of bodies. But actually, bodies are much more complicated than that. Mm-hmm. And then I would stop. And then again, if a kid said, what do you mean? I might say, well, let's go look at a book. Or, I mean, it depends on my comfort level. But a lot of kids, and the other thing I want to say, is that in my experience, this gender is not complicated for kids. It's complicated for adults.
Yeah.
Right? And that is just not, and it's complicated for kids when adults get in their way. So we are afraid of those questions, but in my experience, and it's not just my experience of doing it, but hearing from hundreds and hundreds of parents, it usually goes kind of smoother than they think.
Yeah. For me, I was raised in a bilingual home where my parents spoke Spanish and English. And I think for some children who are raised in a similar home that have a very gendered language, which Romance languages usually have a gendered approach to it, that's also a really great starting point to talk about gender and say, well, what are some of the words that we use in the language that talks about boys and girls? How are those terms similar? How do they sound different? And for me, I would say the O and the A in Spanish are the gendered terms. And so what does it mean that we have this whole language that has been given to us, it's been translated and passed down to us, but that also being a really great entry point for many parents. And so I think the main point is to think about it for yourself before bringing it to your child, and then also make it it being the language that you're using accessible for the child that you're talking to. Because yes, children are human beings, but they're also being guided at the same time. And so using the language that they use might be really helpful in some circumstances. And then if they ask and want more, think about what's going on in your communities that you can also pull from to give the young people examples. Because for older children, like 6th, 7th grade and up, they kind of already get it in a different way, and there's already tension that's happening for them. So they might have more questions around like, well, this person keeps bothering me because I look a particular way, or I hear people talking about the student because they do this. So it might be a lot more specific of a need that they want to ask about, but haven't yet gotten the language or the courage necessarily ready to share.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, both of you were pointing to the reality that like, keep it simple at the beginning, right? Because I do think we as adults tend to get in our way a little bit. And one thing that I've talked with a number of guests with on this channel is how we I think parents worry about saying too much, or like that they'll do too much, and kids will tune you out if they're if they lose interest. But also you don't need to have all the answers. And I was just talking about this with Melissa from Sex Positive Families on our Tuesday Live about how if you don't know something, it's okay to say, or if you're a little uncertain yourself of terminology, you can say, let's look that up together. And that can be a really, powerful intersection point.
Yeah.
A couple Advocates for Youth says, hi, Bianca, love your earrings. So glad you could tune in. And Wendy Sellers, she writes, thank you for your creative and inclusive books, Corey. Keep the comments and questions coming. Actually, Wendy asked a question that is very related to the next thing I was going to ask you. So I will just read her question. She says, this is a big one. So would you please share your thoughts about responding to religiously conservative parents who don't want to talk about gender with their kids because of selected quotes from the Bible about, quote, created male and female?
Here we go.
Yes,
I do.
I was raised agnostic, so I feel like that's important to share. My parents were raised Catholic and had a very traditional upbringing. And so, they never talked to us about gender. And I lived in a very woman-centric home where like it was my mother, my sister, myself, and then my dad. And I think, they just never discussed it. So this is new for all of us, right? Like we're the generation of parents and caregivers who are doing this for the first time. And I think it's important to know that we're going to mess up and that our children will grow and find their own information. And so I think it's really important to center the conversation on why this is the narrative that people want to share in a particular way, and that connects to the values that the family has. And so I think, every family can talk about gender, and if they find a religious text to be useful to them that forms their values, it's important to talk about that. But what you're not talking about is also something your children are going to go and research. So it's important for even religious families.
So she wants to browbeat them. And I also like, I'm saying this ironically, I don't actually like this, but isn't it funny that it was basically implied that the only people who might have an issue with teaching their kids this particular philosophy are just really conservative people who have a literal interpretation of the Bible, and they just take all these quotes out of context, and they twist their Bibles to make it conform to the fact that they just don't want to teach their kids about gender. And I think how Bianca is answering this question is actually pretty indicative of what I said at the top, where if you don't understand what people think and what they believe, you are not going to be able to change their minds, because you have to approach them in the place that they are. Bianca basically said, well, everyone has a gender and you're just going to have to do this, because if you don't do it, your kids are going to figure it out anyway. And, you don't want that. And so she does not understand the perspective of people who would have an issue with this. She doesn't understand it at all. Bianca's strategy is not going to convince anyone that doesn't always already agree with her. And this is a mistake I see made on the left, and it's a mistake that's made on the right. And that's why we watch these things, to be able to learn from them. Because if you're going about something in the same way that Bianca is, you're just not going to be very successful with what you're trying to do.
families in whatever denomination or belief system that they're a part of to really practice with their partner or other adults in their life, talking about how should we talk about transgender people who are members of our community? How can I talk to my young people about what androgynous means? And, you know, those are really important conversations to have with peers before you bring them to your children. I will say that by 7th grade, children have already done that research and they kind of already know. And so for me, it's about making sure that the parents maintain a relationship where their children feel that they can come to them and their parents can be honest with them and say, well, you know, our belief is this, and this is what our religious text tells us. And there are people who don't practice the same faith that we do. And you might hear things like this, right? And I think that just saying it and not putting any type of judgment or certain types of language that's negative to that conversation is really helpful for young people to understand, oh, okay, mom and dad or grandma or whoever understands what I'm talking about and they're open to talking about it and they're going to reinforce what the values of our family are. I think what we also see for some religious families is the challenge when their children begin to not fall into that binary and start to question the binary. And that's a story that is a lot more connected to what we see in nature. It's so diverse. So that's one of the things where Corey says it's more than boys and girls, is that when we look at nature in a different way, we see that it's so much more diverse than just two options.
Yeah, that's great. I'm not sure I have a lot to add. I'm just going to repeat, which is that, you know, my approach, and it's different, but I don't find it fruitful to tell parents they're doing it wrong. Even if I personally think that a parent is doing something wrong, nothing comes of it, right? And again, like, you know, I'm very clear about what I am. I'm an educator, right? So, and as an educator, I'm not interested in that. That's different than like I don't know, dictator or politician or whatever it would be. Like, I'm not actually interested in people just believing what I believe and thinking about things the way I think about them.
Wait. Hang on. Separate topic. I have just been notified by Murphy's Pool that apparently people are going apeshit about me. Was it something I said? Was it the Chrissy Mayer Nitwit stream from 2 nights ago? Are they having some feelings about me on Twitter? Does anyone know about this? Are they going apeshit? Is it about... It can't be about Tim and Adam because I did that like a week ago. Are they really having that many feelings about me? Basically calling Chrissy Mayer out for being an idiot? I don't know. Murphy's Pool seems very convinced that that something is going on. You know what? If they're having feelings right now, I would love nothing better. Love nothing better. It's like I play these people call me mentally insane, and then I play them like a fiddle, and I get them. This all stems from the fact that Chrissy Mayer retweeted a parody account that she thought was Carrie Smith because she didn't think about it. Oh yeah, someone said I wanted to take down Tim Pool. I don't want to take down anyone. I can't help it that Tim Pool's employees have been reaching out to me to tell me about what it's really like to work for Tim Pool. You'll notice I haven't said anything yet publicly because it's not my story to tell. But if people really do want to reach out to me and talk to me about what it was like to work for Tim Pool, I'm going to listen. But I'm not going to release anything unless they want me to. But it's something, I'll tell you what. It's something. Maybe you'll hear about it if someone wants to tell their story. Maybe you won't. Yeah, exactly. Someone's going apeshit over something I said. It must be a day that ends in Y. Hang on. Average person, I see a chat coming in. Would I tell you on a Zoom call? I really can't because listen, I have people that have worked for Tim Pool right now and that, you know him in real life, reaching out to me in confidence. And I'll talk about, like, I'll say, like, there's something going on. But really, it's not my story to tell, not even in private. And I'm sorry, guys. And of course, I do share private information on the Zoom calls because they're private and unrecorded. But this time, it's a little bit more serious than that. It's really not my story to tell. And if they want to tell their story, they are welcome to, and I will support them in doing so. If they don't want to tell it, I don't want to be the one to tell it for them. Like, it is one thing to speak to why Adam was fired from Tim Pool, because Adam fucked me over in a really public fashion, and I've never forgiven him for that, and he's never apologized for that. Like, both Adam and Tim Pool are public people, right? The people reaching out to me right now are not public. They're not really public people. Maybe like an eensy bit public, but not really. And so it's really their responsibility. It's not my monkeys, not my circus, but as an organizational psychologist, I will listen to people who tell me if they've had a rough time in the working environment, but it's not my story to tell. But I have a feeling that what Murphy's Pool is referring to has to do with Chrissy Mayer. What a dumb cunt that bitch is. Anyway, let's keep going. Enough about me.
People figuring out how to talk about this stuff in their own lives. So it's more important for me that a family that might say, you know, being transgender is wrong or doesn't exist, to actually say that to their kids than to say nothing, right? And of course, if I'm working with parents, then I also want to talk about how they can say stuff respectfully and with care. But the approach in my books and the approach when I'm working is not that I have this like great wisdom. It's I don't think that like the liberal take on gender is the right take on gender. It's just one, right? I'm using liberal or progressive in this general way, which often kind of lines up with kind of anti-religious, which I don't think is fair because of course there's lots of religious queer people, there's lots of religious trans people, there's lots of religious all sorts of people. So what I would say to someone who's working with parents like that is think about it's like what Bianca said, think about some questions you can ask those parents and think about some questions you can give those parents to ask their kids. And stop thinking that what you have to do is get someone
Chrissy
to
Mayer.
say...
It's Chrissy Mayer. It's Chrissy Mayer. Incognito did some reconnaissance. It's Chrissy Mayer, that dumb bitch. That dumb bitch. She's having all sorts of feelings. Sin says, I'm still reeling from the loss of IQ points from that one contact with Chrissy Mayer. Yo. True story. I really, really, really did not expect that Chrissy Mayer content to be as bad as it was. Listen, you guys know me. Like, even when we're watching stuff like this, right? We can find redeeming value in stuff like this. There's redeeming value here. These people might be insane and far less left progressives, but they're not stupid. This is not like this content may be terrifying, but it's not idiotic. Chrissy Mayer, I have no idea if anyone finds Chrissy Mayer appealing at all. This is no shade at you. You're allowed to like who you like. I don't really care at all. But can someone, if you find Chrissy Mayer appealing in any way, can you please explain to me why? And this is an honest question. I truly have no idea why people watch this woman.
Being transgender is beautiful, or anything. Or get to say there's any particular thing, because that just doesn't work. It's like telling people just don't do drugs or telling people anything. And again, I want to just sort of reflect, because it's sort of, I'm so aware of it. I spend so much time with parents, that no parents need to be told they're doing it wrong. And no parents need another guidebook, right? Parents need support. Parents need a place to listen and to talk. That's what we all need. Yeah.
Well, would you say then, and I think, Bianca, you were touching on this a bit, that, you know, I mean, it can be, we've all seen this from anything from, you know, gender issues to politics to whatever, that those conversations are just so, they're just such lightning rods that you know, do you think it's most fruitful to really make it a conversation first about values? That's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I feel like that's, you know, where we could find potential intersections and overlap.
Yeah, I mean, I think values is one of the most direct ways to go about talking about a variety of different topics around sexuality. Like, why are we encouraging you to wait until you're in a particular relationship or whatever it looks like around sexuality. And I think, you know, Corey says this thing, I don't know if he remembers, but he said it once and it stuck with me. Your parents, you know, children listen to what parents say, but they also listen to what you don't say. And so that's a really big message. So if you're not talking about gender with your children,
hang on, DeCobb has a great question. DeCobb says there was an organization called the Map Information Exchange. Is that real? Was there actually an organization called that? And it really sounds like these people are talking from the handbook. Do you have a copy of their handbook? I would love. Is that real? I would love to see a copy of their handbook. Am I wrong that this is about sexualizing children? No, you're not wrong at all. Why are they talking about teaching kids about sex when they're 4 to 7 years old? Because those are the age ranges that they gave at the top. Why? Like, what is the point? What is the rush? Why are we talking to kids about sex when they're 4? I mean, I can't think of is there any let's give them the benefit of the doubt just for a moment. Is there any other explanation that anyone can think of for why we might want to talk about sex to kids at 4 years old? The only thing that I can think of, and I'm trying to be intellectually honest here, is to teach them that their private area is private and other people shouldn't be touching their private area. Like, that's really the only reason that I can think about even having a conversation about sex with kids of this age. I'm pretty sure that's the only conversation I had as a kid, was like, the things that the bathing suit covers are not supposed to be touched by other people. Okay, fine. But that's not even really teaching about sex necessarily. That's like just teaching like safety and privacy. But it's not teaching them functionally about how sex works or their feelings about sex or gender or any of those things.
And they might be creating stories or understanding messages that you may not even realize.
The fuck?
That's really important to keep in mind because
that's very loud for me.
So common. Sometimes parents think not talking about something is the best thing to do. But the reality is, especially for young children and teenagers, is that they want to talk about it and they need to talk about it. And
young children want to talk about it?
You know, parents love their children, they want to care for their children, and they want to be.
I guarantee you, there is not a single young child or teenager on this planet that wants to talk to their parents about sex. Did anyone in this chat want to talk to their parents about sex? Okay, maybe there's onesies and twosies, but like, by and large, I think we can all agree that the talk is awkward as hell. No one wants to talk to their parents about sex. That's not real. Maybe they want to talk to people their age about sex. Maybe they're curious about it, but they do not want to talk to their parents about it. Come on.
Ideally, one of the first sources of information that children can go to access information. And, you know, it would be completely wrong for me to say, oh, just, you know, like as Corey had said, give this, you know, regular statement that like we're all equal and whatever it looks like. But if that's not your value, it's going to be demonstrated in your home. If it doesn't align with the values that you're clear about with your family, it's going to demonstrate some tension in a particular way. And tension is not bad. But I think once you get into not talking about it for a while, and then you have a teenager who's like, "Let's talk about it now," it might feel aggressive. It might feel really urgent in a way that isn't always helpful and supportive. So, if you haven't talked about it yet and you're thinking about it, I would definitely encourage people to talk with peers and just start practicing the language because that's something that it will be a challenge for everyone, but it's also okay to say, I don't know. And it's also okay to say, I don't know because our values are this. And we, you know, communicate with our community members more than people who are not in those communities. It's okay to say what the reality is. I think that's what children especially need now is a reality-based conversation about what's possible.
Yeah, well, you're bringing me to something that I wanted to bring up. I had made a note earlier, which is that well, so first, I love that Corey. I don't know if you had remembered that you said that, but the idea that it's as much about what we don't say as what we do. So I think that to me that suggests that parents need to just have a little more intention about these conversations and to look for something we love talking about, which is teachable moments. So I would love if you guys have any, just like quick examples of just to help parents kind of guide their thinking of like really probably easy and everyday teachable moments that might be around them and they just haven't thought about them, or just to kind of help people with their thinking on this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're around. We don't think about them because they're everywhere. They're constantly. Right. I mean, I will often suggest it's about commenting on things. So first of all, you do need to start noticing it. You need to start noticing how everything is boy, girl, man, woman. You need to start paying attention to the bathrooms. You need to start paying attention to when you're reading your kids' books, who's the boy and who's the girl. And of course, now we have sort of like this sort of progressive kids' book world, but there's still all sorts of stereotypes, and it's still very binary. So part of it is just noticing it and then saying it out loud. So with even with with very young children, I'll say stuff like, "Oh, it's interesting how it's all the girl is always this, or the boy always does that. Why are the trucks like?" So a classic example is Goodnight Construction Site, right? It's a board book for very young kids, and all the trucks are boys, right? So it's just so a lot of parents do one thing, which is they just change the pronouns. Right, so that's a common. I think there's a lot of things maybe started happening in the '80s, and parents still do it. I also think it's useful just to say like, "Oh, do you notice how it's all? Why are all these construction vehicles boys?" So, and that's it, right? So for young kids, like teachable moments is often kind of just interrupting this thing. Also on the playground, right? So certainly pointing out like, "Oh, do you notice? Do you notice who in this playground? I mean, not anymore, but back in the day,
when we could go outside, you mean? Yeah,
go outside en masse." Right, you'll notice who is barreling through the playground and not paying attention to other people's bodies, and who is playing on their own, and pointing that out. Right, pointing that out to you. So, do you notice how this and this? And just part of it is just pointing out that gender does exist, and that again, this isn't about saying boys do this and girls do that. It is about talking about how we get called these words and how does it feel. So another example, and I'll give this last one, and then Bianca, I'm sure, has lots too. Is that how much people, and particularly if you have a kid who's presenting as a girl or who is a girl, people will say, "What a lovely girl," or "What a sweet little girl," "What a princess," or "What a this or that," and people are doing that in a nice way. So it's not about like telling those people off or telling your kid that those people are doing something wrong, but it is about pointing out, "Oh, that's interesting that this is what they're calling you," and then also asking, "How did that feel?" Right.
Yeah, I think examples in general. So, for example, growing up in my home, I very much like washed the dishes. My sister took out the trash, right? And so maybe considering like what is the chore list in your home or the task list in the home, and letting every child experience what it's like to do all pieces of those things. Because as they grow up, they're going to have to know how to do that. And that was a big thing in college when I started over 20 years ago, where people didn't know how to do laundry. And a lot of those people were masculine people, male identified people. And today it's not, hopefully, so much the reality, but little things like that. Like, what do we do daily to make sure that our family runs the way that it needs to run and has the needs that we need? What does that look like, and who are we asking to do it? And then asking questions. Why do you think mom might do this? Why do you think dad might do that? Why do you think whatever terms you have for yourselves in your home, thinking about that, asking children, do you still like this color? Do you still like this comforter? Those are things that sometimes children don't even know that they get to have a say around. And sometimes they feel like, oh, well, this was the princess mode that I was in, so everything in my room's princess, but I'm really now more into like Star Wars or whatever. Like asking, like, are you still into this?
Yes, I agree, Spirit Matter. Very much.
Today? And
very Kevin Spacey
I wouldn't be
vibes.
surprised if a lot of people are really into more fantasy stuff to kind of cope with the reality that we're in now, or if people go to a more science space, right? And want to explore.
That's actually a really good point. See, this is what I mean when I say we can take salient points away from this stuff that we can't take away from Chrissy Mayer because everything she does is trash. Like what Bianca just said is people might be retreating into a land of fantasy to deal with the reality that we are facing. Now, remember, this was 2 years ago during the pandemic. but I still think it's probably true today. And what I take away from that is, listen, if you have kids, do not let them watch anime. Do not let them watch anime. I promise you. The gender bullshit is coming through the fucking anime. They're having it in schools too. I'm not discounting the roles that schools are playing in this, but that like anime culture, I don't know what it is at all, but it is one of those things that is really confusing to kids for some reason. Do not allow them to watch anime. All like I've seen this over and over and over again with parents who have kids that have decided that they're non-binary, or have decided that, like, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, when they had never said anything their entire lives about this, like, those kids almost universally are obsessed with anime. Okay? And so the what Bianca said is, like, people are retreating into fantasy. Well, I'm going to include anime in that, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. And anime is reinforcing a lot of these concepts for kids.
Or a little bit more about like what science offers. So those are two examples. Also, like during bath time, if you're still bathing your child, that's also a really great opportunity to talk to them about their bodies, but also to say, you know, are you comfortable with maybe, you know, Bianca bathing you one day so that, you know, we can have a night off together, or whatever it looks like. Offering that and having a young person know they get to have a say in who touches their body, who gets to do things with them, but also it allows them to understand what body autonomy looks like, and that they get to say yes or no. And so those ideas of consent also show up.
I do think those are important things to teach
We don't always make
kids.
those connections very clearly, but these are really subtle and small ways that parents and caregivers can really offer that opportunity to their young people. And then if you have teenagers, you know, and if they're still talking to you, congratulations, because sometimes they won't. That's totally common. It's nothing personal, really. I would also just open up a conversation and say, you know, are you interested in anybody in school? Do you have any crushes? And not make it a gendered question, right? Like a crush can be any gender. And then just let them talk to you and explore. You can also talk about pronouns, you know, asking them like, do you know anybody, or what's your familiarity with using gender neutral pronouns like they or them? That's a really common thing that's happening now for young people. And I think they want to talk about it with their parents, but they don't always get the opportunity because they don't know how to introduce it without it maybe becoming like something that's frustrating for the parents. But there's so many different opportunities. And I would, you know, echo what Corey says in using media as well.
Would I be a bitch? I know I didn't finish that sentence properly. So oftentimes, if you're new to happy hour, oftentimes there are like two conversations going on during happy hour. One is the conversation about what we're watching, and I am always listening to it, but usually there's always something else going on. And what seems to be going on this particular Friday is that Chrissy Mayer is having a fit about me on Twitter. And yeah, Steven's like, yes. It is a good freeze frame, Spirit Matter. Would I be a bitch? Oh God, this is awful. I really shouldn't do this. I know that that Carrie Smith did an interview with Chrissy Mayer live yesterday. And there is a teeny tiny part of me, just a teeny tiny part of me, that after we finish up, maybe we're already going to have Nitwits episode 2. But the other part of me says, you know, you've already had Nitwits 1 this week. That was a big deal. I don't know that we need to follow up with episode 2 immediately. That might be a little too much for people. Even though I've done some great serious content this week. But if they want to have a hissy fit about me on Twitter, then maybe I follow up and do Nitwits 2 tonight after we get done. I know they talked about me on that episode because Phil sent me the clip. I know they talked about me. Carrie said, Carrie committed on that episode that she is going to completely give up her no contact regime and that she's now going to talk about me on video. We'll see. We'll see.
I just watched a show the other day where my partner was like, oh, that person, something, something. And I was like, yeah, it caught my eye. That's why I wanted to watch this story, because I didn't know how they were going to talk about their gender. And it's okay to like pause a show or like mute the show during commercials and be like, so what do you think about how the story's playing out? Well, do you think all the girls need to be helped? Do you, how do you see the boys trying to help everybody? Do you think that's common? I think those are really important conversations to have for sure.
Yeah, and I'll say, if I could just add to that when you have younger kids but who are still watching shows, often, I mean, the TV becomes the thing that allows you time to do something else. But it's really important to sit down and watch at least a few things to know, like, what shows your kids watching. Watch one episode with them, and then talk while you're watching it. And as Bianca's saying, actually, the more polite thing is to pause. But if you're polite, like I am, you'll just talk. But because the other thing is that you're also then teaching your kid critical thinking skills. And I just want to say one more thing about what Bianca is doing.
That's actually a good point.
It's so important is this thing of body autonomy and also critical thinking, that we tend to think that talking to our kids, that we have to teach kids about X, Y. It's like talking to kids about gender, talking to kids about reproduction, talking to kids about this. But at all times, what we are doing is talking to kids about body autonomy. Because because the idea that we get to choose our gender, we get to name it, it's entirely about body autonomy. So if we don't have a concept of body autonomy, and if we don't actually believe in this, the idea that we should be able to make choices.
Listen, this guy has actually just made one of the best arguments that I've ever heard made for the pro-gender ideology argument. And that is bodily autonomy. That argument would be a problem, I think, for a lot of people. That's how they're going to suck a lot of lefty parents in with that. Because then it's not about, it's basically linking it to abortion, right? It's basically saying, like, my body, my choice. I can be whatever gender I want to be. Women who come from the left are really going to understand that. And if you don't think that's true, this is the reason that the Republicans did so poorly in the midterms. That is a good argument. No, Fish Addict, it does apply to minors. It absolutely does. That is a good argument. Now, a counterbalance to that is that minors don't have a developed brain to be able to think rationally, and therefore probably should not be making medical decisions until they're over the age of 18. But that does not eliminate the bodily autonomy argument, guys. Saying you have to wait until you're a certain age is not the same thing as saying you're not what you think you are. All it is saying you have to wait until you're a certain age. It's not the same thing. I don't know how to combat that one, but if anyone has ideas on how to combat that one, and no, I do not think that the argument that you have to wait until you're 21 to drink combats that argument at all, because you're not talking about bodily autonomy. You're not talking about that. Right, but I don't disagree with this. But what I'm talking about is something needs to be come up with to specifically combat that argument. Saying we shouldn't be influencing it, okay, fine. But do they not have the bodily autonomy to make that choice? Kids do stupid things all the time with their bodies. Kids ride bikes really fast down the street and aren't wearing helmets. That could be really dangerous. Kids climb trees that they could fall out of. That's really dangerous. Kids can get piercings when they're under the age of 18 with parental consent. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump. Well, I mean, I guess fish addict, and no offense, but I guess I would argue that I understand what bodily autonomy means, and I'm not sure you're quite there. Yeah, the libertarians might have ideas about this. That's a really good argument. And by the way, saying I just don't understand or calling me a leftist because you don't agree with what I'm saying right now, that's not actually going to come up with a counterpoint to the argument that he just made. So you guys, and I'm not suggesting anyone is doing this yet, but I know how this goes. If your inclination right now is to insult me or to whine, I promise you that is not going to solve the problem. I mean, parents can tell kids to do that, but have you ever had a kid? Have you ever had a kid that always wore a helmet riding a bike? I guarantee you that even if a kid is told to wear a helmet by their parents, that doesn't mean they do it. And they're allowed to decide not to. Now they could get really hurt, but like, I mean, they could get really hurt even if they were wearing a helmet. A helmet is no guarantee that they aren't going to get hurt. Have you ever seen the Tour de France? You can get really hurt riding a bike and still wear a helmet. Yeah, exactly. My parents told us to wear a helmet, and my brother would take it off as soon as mom was out of sight. Exactly. Ah, yeah. Does this have to do with kids taking hormones without parents' knowledge? Yes, it does. Back in my day, we didn't wear helmets at all. My day, neither. I didn't wear a helmet riding a bike. I didn't wear a helmet rollerblading. I didn't like any of that stuff. I hated wearing helmets. You're not getting the point. Fish addict, I'm really going to recommend that you take a couple breaths and you think about the point that we're trying to make here, because how you're approaching this, and you can take this advice or leave it. I'm not trying to pick on you, but how you're approaching this is not actually going to result in you coming up with a definitive argument that can combat the one he just made. RJ Miller says bodily autonomy is extremely important, and I want you to know that you have the power to have a voice in this conversation. Part of my job as a parent is to protect you, and that means this is a conversation. I like that argument. That is not going to get you around bodily autonomy. I like how you're approaching it. It's not going to get you around that point. Oh, fuck, that's a good argument.
Choices about our bodies and all the things about them, then it just becomes a rule, and it's a strange thing. It just becomes almost like science, and that's not what gender is. Gender isn't science. And so yeah.
Well, I'm glad. Yes, I can't agree more. And actually, on my Tuesday live with Melissa, I was talking about how I've always been into the like no hug rule. Like you don't need to hug people like with my kids, because I think that's like such a weird. It's just a thing, I think, with adults and kids, and people expect kids to hug all the time, and why should they hug all the time? So I think that that's definitely a place to start. And I love, I want to underscore, you know, you both mentioned these sort of, you know, opportunities where you can talk during show or pause or whatever. And I just want to underscore to parents who are watching this that these are really quick touch points. These are like not big, deep, crazy conversations. So I just want to say that, because I think, you know, so many, even this language, like have the talk, you know, people get so like bound up in it, and it's not one talk, it's like a bajillion of them across the 18 plus whatever years that your kid's going to be in your home. So I just wanted to underscore that, because I think people can kind of like maybe back off from the idea of these conversations, because they think it's going to be a big involved thing and they don't feel ready for it. So, and I also wanted to point out, when you were talking, I think Bianca, you were talking about dishwashing and all these other things, that I think this is also a good opportunity for parents to, you know, just like maybe tweak little ways that they're modeling, you know, gender roles at home and how they're doing things, and maybe like switching things up so they're not, you know, always in these lanes that are more traditional. I know personally, my mom, I grew up in a very patriarchal, traditional Korean household, and
well, I don't think this makes a difference though, RJ, because the feeling is expressed through the physical body. So I don't think that actually makes a difference.
the day that I started changing my own oil of my car, like crawling underneath, she was horrified. But I felt like I was like breaking boundaries. Yeah. So I would love to talk a little bit about community. And I know that one of the things that you guys feel strongly about is this really thinking about gender in terms of the context of community. So can you guys speak a little bit more about what that means and why that's important?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons why Corey also invited me to do this in a collaborative way is because that's the reality. Like, parents don't do this by themselves. Right? And many families have someone like me in them, where they are the people who are either babysitters or caretakers or people who help them in a variety of different ways. And that's just the reality of how we move in so many different ways in this world. And so, yeah, there's like, I teach my friends, kids, like how to blow bubbles with bubble gum, or, I make songs up with them. And those are the things that are really important, but also like I can give them advice and parents can be like, don't listen to Bianca. That's not how we do it here. And that's a thing for them to see happen in front of them, because then they can be like, we love and care for Bianca. She's a part of our community and family. And she's not always going to tell you the things that we value in a particular way. She knows that, and I can say it in front of her. It demonstrates that it's okay to disagree with people in a way that is respectful and that's rooted in what you value as a family. It also demonstrates what's a great opportunity to resolve certain types of what could potentially be conflicts. But also, we can learn about so much around gender and ourselves from the people around us. And that's one of our tips, is that everybody everywhere can teach you something about gender in some kind of way. And we're not in this alone. And I think that's a really important piece to remind parents about, is that there's support. And if you're not comfortable, you can always reach out to like that one aunt or cousin or best friend and say, can you help me talk through this? Or can you talk to my kid about it? Like, there's so many different approaches that are possible. And I love that you reminded us, Christine, that like, yeah, commercial breaks are like 90 seconds. So it doesn't have to be like a 2-hour talk, and it just be one question. You talk about it, great. The show's back on. That's real life and that's reality. So it doesn't have to feel overbearing, but that's also what community is for. Community's here to show up and to help, and that's what a lot of us find in many of the communities that we're a part of.
So I think the other piece of it for us, the reason why we talk about community is,
I think that that Nick is making a really great point in the chat. You can't beat the argument for bodily autonomy, except kids have to learn from their mistakes. My daughters only listen when they unfortunately got hurt. Forcing the issue only drives them towards it instead of away. That's a really excellent point, Nick. Man, yes, you got a wrench. I got to give you one on the other channel as well. Remind me next time. I forgot last time. I apologize. Yeah, this is like the toughest piece, because like, and this is also why like I don't think that book banning in schools is a good idea, because what's happening. And I know I don't want to hear it's not book banning. Well, yes it is. I'm sorry, it is, and it's bullshit. And every single time people go after the books, do you know what's happening? The teachers or the librarians are going to come up with a way to tell the kids, oh, well, they took that book out of the library. And then the kids are going to want to read it even more. The kids probably didn't even want to read it in the first place. And then all of a sudden they find out that the parents are campaigning to have it taken out of the library. And then all of a sudden the kids actually want to read the fucking book. So let's just forget for a second. If you remove one book from a library, they're probably going to replace it with 3 more that you don't know about. But the sheer act of banning the book in the first place is going to result in the kids wanting to read that book. It's a really, really salient point, and it's like, I don't know how to get around it right now. I really don't. Well, remind me next time, Spirit Matter. I'll get you a wrench on the other channel. I mean, there is something to be said about like what resists persists. If you fight against this, they're going to want to do it even more. You're going to create a bigger problem. But I like RJ's comment here. I'm thinking that part of the comeback is loving who you are and talking about what loving yourself looks like in a healthy way. I think that that's a great comment.
Two more parts I want to say. One is that our gender is always something that we experience and that other people are we experience through other people. So gender is about part of our experience of gender is other people's expectations of what gender we are, right? So I walk down the street and I look kind of like a guy, more or less. And so my experience of gender is through the eyes of other people. So gender is not something that is that is not something we experience in isolation. We can't. It doesn't work that way. And so part of it is a reminder of that. The gender isn't just like how you feel and what you want to look like. A good example is like when we talk about people being misgendered, right? So someone may identify themselves as non-binary and may present in a way that is understood to be traditionally feminine. So they may have visible breasts, they may have long hair, they may be wearing lipstick. They get to identify who they are. They get to say, I'm not she, I'm a they, or whatever pronoun they want to use. And many, many people in the world are going to move through the world and treat that person as a woman, as a girl, as feminine in some way. And those experiences are part of that person's gender. So our experience of gender is always both how we feel and how other people are both treating us and their expectations. So community is always part of it. You can't figure out your gender. I mean, no one really figures it out, I don't think. Anyway, maybe it's just me. But anyway, gender is a part of community. The other thing is also just to kind of push against a kind of more kind of white and very Western idea of kind of individualism, right? Which is to say that like, I am me and I assert myself and that is who I am. And actually who we are, as Bianca said over and over again, and as you already mentioned in terms of you growing up, we are the result of the community we grew up in. Whatever our relationship to the community is, if some of us may be
I'm sorry, hang on.
Some of us may have experienced violence in that community.
I'm sorry, I feel bad if I'm wrong about this, but this guy is really giving me certain vibes. And the more he talks, the more we're going to call them Pee Wee Herman vibes, okay? This guy is really giving me certain vibes and it's creeping me out. And the fact that he is also the most intelligent person in the discussion, and I'm still getting those vibes from him, really, really, really freaks me out. Yes, and he casually tossed in white and Western. Which of course means that white is not about the color of your skin. He is very creepy. I agree.
But we're still the result of all of that, right? Who we are is inextricably tied to the communities that we come from. And so that's why we say gender, I can't remember what the little tip was, but that to think about gender is to think about community. And if you're not thinking about community, you're missing a big part of gender. I think that's what happens sometimes with lessons, like sex educators that are working around gender and taking a more kind of biomedical approach. And then it just doesn't really resonate for a lot of kids. It's certainly my experience that the positive stuff I get back from kids often has to do with this stuff, has to do with like talking about the things that other people aren't talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's oh, go ahead, Bianca. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that allows, just as another segue, it allows people to talk about cultural differences. It allows people to talk about, we're still a community, even though this person might have a different faith, that they practice, or this community speaks a different language, or this community has a different immigration status. Like whatever it looks like, those are still community members in many different ways. So one of the things that I want people to take away from this conversation in our communities is that we're not just in one community. We're in multiple communities at the same time, and that shifts in context. And so, yeah, just to keep that in mind, that we're not just in one particular space. And, like we're all so complicated and different, and so we can value the multiple communities that we're in.
And if I could just add one more thing to that, and this is what as parents we need to remember about our kids, even our kids that are 5 and 6 years old. Once our kids are outside and around other kids, they are in other communities. And parents often have that first experience of like, oh, where did you learn that song? Or how do you know about that wrestler? right? And then we think like, oh, it's an influence of an individual, but it's that, and our kids are in multiple communities, and they don't have that language, and they don't think about it that way, but we should think about that. And as Bianca said, like, we can harness that, we can use that when we want to have conversations.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. So I just wanted to make a note to the community, to people who are watching, that I have a couple questions that I want to ask. But so now, and our time is running down. So if you have questions for Corey and Bianca, this is the time. Drop them in the comments. And also, I know a lot of people come to the broadcast later. So if you have questions, then drop them in the comments, and I'll harass these guys and see if they can answer after. Well, so and Wendy says, Bianca, thanks for sharing your insights about the importance of community.
Yes,
and learning
I
about
do.
gender and the role of trusted adults around kids. Multiplicity of communities each person is in. It's so important. Thank you, Wendy. So, Corey, it's interesting. I don't know if I had heard about just the way you framed it, and I'm not sure I'm going to replicate it right here quite perfectly, so apologies, but just the idea that, gender is not only about, how we are experiencing the world, but really hugely about how other people are and are perceiving us. And that's like, yes, of course, which made me think, and then you mentioned, the experience. I think that is more obvious in a case where somebody is misgendered. And that was leading me to the question of,
does he?
The best ways,
has anyone else noticed this?
We as adults can be allies to people, and then and also teach our kids to be good allies.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complicated question, because whenever we start talking about allies, it's like, well, who's who?
Right.
Oh my God, he does.
It's like, so yeah. So I want to think about like, how can,
He's got purple, he's got red, he's got yellow. Okay, I mean, we can acknowledge that maybe he was allowing a child to paint his nails, but that's a little fucking creepy. I hope it, what? I mean, maybe it was one of those that maybe he has a daughter or something and she was painting his nails. Well, I didn't see it, Fish Addict. I apologize. No, he's got it on both hands. He's got it on. He's got purple. He's got purple over. Oh shit! No.
What are the best ways?
It's still the same spot. Okay. No, he had purple on one hand and red at another. Wow. Good. Yeah. Yeah. His manicurist must. Well. That's not scream. Well, I mean, I suppose maybe it should scream to me that he had painted nails, but I guess it didn't process. I mean, I've seen like little girls like, like painting people's nails, just like playing. I've seen that, and it's not in like a pedo way, just in like a kid way, I don't know. Maybe that's what happened.
We as adults can be allies to people, and then and also teach our kids to be good allies.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complicated question, because whenever we start talking about allies, it's like, well, who's who?
Right.
So it's like, so yeah, so I want to think about like, how can, I want to reframe the question, which is like, so how can we ourselves learn to be decent people, and how can we decent?
Yeah, let's run with that.
So, oh God, I mean, we don't have time. So what do I want to say? I mean, to me, I want to start with bodies, right? So I want to say that like all of my mentors, all the people that I learned from were all disabled people, mostly queer disabled people of color, who have been my teachers and my mentors and my partners and all these other things. And, they're the ones that have always reminded me to ground everything in bodies, right? So to remember that everybody is valuable and everybody is beautiful and everybody is different, right? And that goes for sex assigned at birth and gender, right? And so that to me is just this core lesson that we have to constantly be teaching ourselves, reminding ourselves, because of course the other thing I want to say, this is going off topic, is like as adults, most of us most of us experience hatred of our bodies, right? This world is not meant for any of our bodies, actually, right? So, because none of us meet this kind of ideal of skinny, white, and healthy, and whatever. So it's hard. It's hard to do what you're asking, because so many of us live with so much pain around our bodies, and not all the time, but sometimes. I think most people kind of could, on reflecting that, would feel that way. So You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna ask Bianca if she has a thought because I'm getting overwhelmed with my thoughts. So let's see if Bianca says something, and then maybe I can come up with something else.
Yeah, I mean, you have to restate the question because I was thinking about stuff and then I forgot what the question was. So I was like, is that?
Well, I think it's a general question of how to be a better human. But I think, and I'll just interject first and say, if that framing helps you collect your thoughts for a second, that, you know, Corey, I think it's such an interesting point that you bring up the reality that all of us are self-critical in some way, right? Because I think that the more we can tune in to that just on our own as human beings, like that is the seed of the empathy that will then hopefully grow and help you be a better human being. So that would be my like observation from your comment, which I think is it's a big one, because I think that's a big missing piece in this, the empathy component.
Yeah. So actually, if I can just, before Bianca goes on, just to build on that, because you're absolutely right. So for example, watch yourself when you're saying shitty stuff about yourself in front of your kids.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I have to do all the time.
That's another really good tip.
Right?
Listen, man, this guy, for all of his painted nails, we've got a really good view of it right there. He's got a red one. He's got a yellow one. He's got a couple purple ones. I don't know what's going on there. But for all of his painted nails, he is saying some really smart things. What he just says, like, don't say shitty things about yourself when your kids are around. That's a really good point for on several different levels. So don't underestimate these people. These people are not Chrissy Mayer level stupid. These people are very, very smart, and that's why these people are winning. And the right is answering them with Chrissy Mayer, which is why they're losing. I mean, it's just like, that is a really good point. And for that matter, don't say shitty things about yourself in general ever, unless you absolutely have to. It's a bad idea. Don't talk to yourself like that.
But it's really helpful because I really do not want my kid to feel the way they their body the way I feel. So that's just it's so hard to do, but
Yes.
we can all just try to do. We won't get it perfect, but just try.
Yes.
Corey's book, Sex is a Funny Word, has a really great exercise where they ask you to like draw your body today and draw what you think your body might look like as you grow. I think that's something that parents can also do on their own or with each other or with their peers and talk about, like, where's my body stuff coming up, if at all, and am I comfortable sharing this picture with my child of how I'm imagining my body currently and then in the future. I think that gives us a really great opportunity to talk about what does kindness look like for ourselves, and what do we have to forgive ourselves from holding on to. And that's a really huge, I mean, that's a human thing, right? And so, you know, I think for young people, seeing that modeled is really important, but also reminding young people that, like, being kind to other people, not nice, but like kind, and receiving them as human beings looks like not name calling. It looks like knowing how to properly say people's names correctly. It looks like using descriptors that aren't offensive when you can't remember someone's name. Those are some really great examples of how parents can model that language for young people and also talk about bodies in a way that is factual and not always harmful.
See, this is why people like this are much more dangerous, because they're saying a lot of things that sound like common sense tips that are really not that offensive, if we're honest about it. They're saying things that are, generally speaking, good advice, and then they slip in the gender stuff. You don't want to use pronouns for someone that in a way that could be offensive for people. That's just not considerate. And then all of a sudden, it becomes compelled speech, doesn't it?
So, you know, I'm 6 feet tall and I'm fat. Those are two really good things for children to understand because it's true, you know? And like, I do look like a giant to, you know, 6-year-olds because that's true. When we sit down, it's different. We can be eye to eye in a particular way. So I think those are some of the realities that many people don't ever get to talk about. And if they do want to talk about people's bodies, people are always like, oh my goodness, don't say that. But there's a way to talk about the differences in bodies without it being something that targets and harms people that are being discriminated. I think that's a really important way to model communication in general.
Well, absolutely. You know, so my last question.
Oh my God. Guess what, guys? Former President Trump to make a statement tonight at 8:30 p.m. on the never-ending witch hunt. We're getting a Trump press conference on a Friday at 8:30 p.m. What the hell? Oh man. Brianna, I know this is off topic, Karlyn, but could someone hire you to give them knitting lessons? Oh, I'm a horrible knitting teacher. You don't want to learn from me. I'm a horrible, horrible knitting teacher. But listen, go to so where I picked up a lot of stuff. Honestly, like I started knitting just by going and buying a knitting kit at the craft store, and you get some yarn and you get an instruction book and you get some needles and you make a hat or a scarf. That was the very first thing I ever knitted. It teaches you how to knit and purl and do maybe some basic increases and decreases, and like that you can start with something like that. There's a website called Craftsy that has a lot of great classes on it that are just really well produced. I've actually learned a lot from Craftsy in different techniques and stuff like that. And they have classes in everything. They don't just do knitting. Like you can learn how to do anything on Craftsy. You can learn how to bake cakes and make cheese and quilt and make jewelry and like every craft. So those are my suggestions. I am a horrible teacher. I have tried. I do not have the patience for it because for me it's like knitting is so second nature to me now that I personally forget what it's like to be a beginner knitter. I forget how hard it is. I forget how confusing it is. I forget how, you don't know what the pattern looks like and that the techniques can be and take a little while to master. But that's honestly my best advice is to just like get some needles. You can even start with watching some YouTube videos and just learn knit and purl and a yarn over and like a knit two together and maybe like a slip knit if you're feeling saucy. And like, that's really all you need to know. That's it. And then just practice and just keep knitting. No, sorry for getting off topic. It's okay. It's totally fine to ask, and I do appreciate you asking, and I'm flattered. I just don't want to torture you with my teaching. But just practice. That's all it is. Just practice. Yeah, like Fish Addict says, I found that often people who are very skilled at something make bad teachers. And again, for me, it's like I kind of have a vague memory of knitting it used to be hard for me, and I would make stupid mistakes all the time, and I would drop stitches, and I would mess up the pattern and all this stuff. But I really don't remember that much anymore. And so for me, like I actually taught a knitting class like at PorkFest one year. And it was like the hardest thing I've ever done because people were like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, and I was trying to show them, and I could not, like, we were not speaking the same language. So I've tried to teach, it just doesn't work. I'm sorry.
Sort of chuckling to myself because I'm a little obsessed with this concept or this thing. And Bianca, you mentioned being like you are like the trusted adult goals in for the people around you. And because the reality is, I think there are several realities for parents.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to grab it and do it myself.
Feel like coming to, or it just might not feel comfortable. And two, they might generally feel comfortable, but just then not feel comfortable about this particular topic, or whatever the topic is at hand. So I have actually had sit downs with both my kids to identify their trusted adults and figure out who those people are.
Listen, if you want to learn how to knit, just start off knitting some simple scarves, really simple scarves. You usually don't have to do increases and decreases. You can just like literally knit and purl. That's it. And just practice and know you're going to suck for a while, and it's okay. And you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay too. It is not the end of the world. I used to feel a lot of pressure when I was knitting. I don't feel any pressure anymore because I know if I make a mistake, I can just go back and fix it. It's really not that big of a deal. And really, most of the time, you don't care anyway. And so, yeah, you just need to practice. That's it.
And I'd love for you guys to share your thoughts on that. Like, what are some ways to do that? I was probably a little heavy-handed about it, to be honest. So what are some ways you would recommend parents going about helping their kids identify those people in their lives?
I would first start by asking them, who do you feel safe with? Mm-hmm. And about like what safe means to them. Mm-hmm. So safety being, who do I trust to make me some food that I know that I'm going to like and eat that's in the house? Who do I trust or feel safe with babysitting me? Or starting with those kinds of conversations so they can reflect back to you how they're understanding safety. I think another question.
Oh,
to ask-
Barb has got some intel here. No mention of a maze, but Corey's website says raised in the 70s by a children's librarian and sex therapist, Corey grew up to be a sex educator and author and a queer person who smiles a lot when they talk. Well, that makes a ton of sense, doesn't it, Barb? What do I think of Harmeet's knitting? Harmeet is very talented. Harmeet's doing sweaters. She's doing skin intarsia. Like Harmeet is doing like some and Harmeet's sweaters are like fitted too. And it is not easy to do like a good like fitted sweater. Like Harmeet is very, very talented with what she's doing.
would be, who do you not want to be around? I mean, those are important questions that we don't ever ask because we want to get information that's useful and helpful, but that information is also really helpful, and it gives you information where you can ask questions later. Like, so tell me, what's up with this person that you mentioned? Why don't you want to, like, I thought it was really interesting. Tell me more. That opens it up for your young person to tell you why they might not feel comfortable, what suspicions might occur, but also what exchange they might have had that left them feeling uneasy, uncomfortable, or they just were like, I just didn't like how they talked about Star Wars because I really love Star Wars. Those are really important things to think about. So those would be my first 2 questions to suggest for parents.
I think that's great.
I think, yeah, that's great. The only thing, and the thing that comes to mind as Bianca's talking is that I also, depending on the age of the kid, will talk about safety versus comfort. So it is my expectation that we all feel uncomfortable sometimes, but we needn't. I try to avoid the word should. So the goal is to not feel unsafe. I kind of totally want to ask you, Christine, can you talk about, you said you did heavy-handed. I really want to hear that.
Oh, no.
It's important for all of us to share when we do things and we think we didn't do them great.
Well, yeah, no, I was sort of like poking fun at myself, but I mean, I literally was like, okay, you guys might not want to talk to me about stuff. That's okay. I have a 9-year-old and a 15-year-old, and this was a couple of years ago for each of them. And I said, so, let's figure out a few people you would feel comfortable and, talking to about stuff. And then one of my kids was having a party of teenagers, and I said, okay, I just want you girls to know that I was driving everybody home, and I was like, just want you girls to know, anybody needs a trusted adult, I'm your person. Like, and everybody was like, oh God, here she is. That's all I meant.
Yeah.
When you said that, right? Like, that's a reaction because they were like, oh my gosh, Chrissy's mom. And yeah, like that's.
Some of them took me up on it.
Works. I think the other piece around that, because I have a lot of parents who are like, my kid just turned 16, can they call you? And the first thing that I say to them is, how much information do you want me to share with you? Are you allowing your child to reach out to me and talk to me 100% without you having to know every single detail? How much privacy are you willing to offer your child? And so for a lot of parents, they're just like, I just want them to talk to you about whatever it is. That's what they say. And then usually they'll be like, has my kids reached out to you?
Send me the transcript.
About that. Just sometimes parents are like, I just want to make sure they did reach out to you. And like, they will reach out to me when they need to. It's not going to be immediate all the time. And sometimes it's going to be after they're in the middle of like a disaster, but at least they're reaching out because they need the help and they know it and they have that contact. And, it's not always as horrible as we might think it is, but it might be that this whole world at the moment.
Yeah.
So we need to extend that. The body autonomy in the sense of privacy as well when we are wanting to find a trusted adult for our kids.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, our time is running down. You guys have been so generous with your wisdom and your time. Is there anything that you want to mention that we haven't covered, or do you feel like we've crushed it this afternoon?
So much. The one thing that we haven't talked about that I just want to make clear is that, as Corey has said, like, sex assigned at birth is one thing. Gender is another. Gender expression, the way that we present ourselves to the world, is also a separate identity and idea. But also the sexual orientation is guided in a sense through gender, but it's different from gender as well. So these are all pieces of our identities that are important and that we learn from our communities, but they're not the same. And so I think those are really important pieces to keep in mind, especially as you have children growing up and asking you questions in a particular way.
Yeah, I would. So I will just like to expand on that or to add to it. Just that I think that it's become a common thing, unfortunately, to say like sex and gender are like completely unrelated, and they're not actually completely unrelated. Mm-hmm. Our gender is very much connected to what our sex assigned at birth is, but in very complicated ways. They are connected, but they're different. They're two different things, but they're connected. And the way that I think about it is like the thing is that because we all grow up in this world where we don't get to talk about stuff and where we aren't encouraged to explore, we end up like by the time we're like 12, like in this tight knot. And so one of the things we need to do to help ourselves and kids start to explore it is we do need to kind of unpack it in some way. So separating these things is useful, and talking about sex and gender as different, and orientation as a third thing. But remembering that actually they're all connected because they're all in our bodies. Right?
Yeah.
We all experience them. And so when it feels so overwhelming, that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just that we're human.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what like beautiful and perfect way to close. And I will say that Amaze has a number of like just short educational videos for anybody that touches on all these issues, but also ones that will help like people get their head around terminology if they're a little uncertain. We talked about that earlier, that not knowing sometimes gets in the way of having conversations. So I will link all of those up in the notes. I'll link up your wonderful websites so people can find you. And, thank you again, Corey and Bianca, for being so generous with your time, open with your hearts, and, sharing all of your wisdom with us. This has been a really, really lovely conversation.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And if you have questions for Corey and Bianca, please drop them in the comments if you're coming to this later, and we will get those answered.
All right, guys.
Have a great weekend.
I guess that's all we have for today for our show. I have to admit, it wasn't nearly as cringe as I thought it was going to be, given all of the other content that I've seen on amaze.org. And I've seen a lot of really bad content from amaze.org. I have to say, those presenters were very smart. Both of them. Probably Corey more than Bianca, but like both of them were highly intelligent about how they were explaining the concepts. They were oftentimes giving out actually really good advice, and I think that that's actually the most dangerous thing, right? I think it's more dangerous have people who are really smart explaining this stuff than it is to have people who are like raging morons explaining it, because the really smart people are going to be able to work in and really like integrate the nonsense into the stuff that's actually good material, and then it's going to be harder to distinguish between the two. So just be aware of that. Really be aware when you see this stuff coming around. There wasn't anything that jumped out at me as overtly bad, other than I am scared to the level at which they're integrating the bad stuff in with the good, because that's what's going to make it the most difficult. Anyway, I guess that's all we have for today. I think I've kind of nixed the idea of doing a Chrissy Mayer reaction tonight, just because I don't want to. It's been a long week. I don't want to. Trump is apparently doing some stuff in an hour and a half. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go drink some of my other beer. I didn't even get through a whole thing today. And I'm going to go sit on the couch. And I'm going to relax, okay? But I do want to let you know that we will be doing Socialism Saturday tomorrow, which is really exciting. And I haven't picked out the presentation yet, but I want to show you guys what I'm thinking as a preview. I'm thinking the American Communist Party. I'm thinking we're going to do commie presentation tomorrow, like full-on communist, because they've got a couple reaction videos about like how the communists feel about the election. I think that would be interesting. Do you guys want to hear how communists feel about the election? I think that would be good. Like, they're a little bit shorter, but that means we can watch a couple of them maybe. And so I think that would be neat. But you want to know what I found out on this page? Check this out. Is it on their homepage? Check this out. Okay. So this is the American Communist Party homepage on YouTube. They subscribe to Sam Cedar. It's like their number one subscription is to Sam Cedar. I used to love Sam Cedar. I used to listen to Sam Cedar every single day. Is Bob Ava Keon in it? I'm not sure. Is that who that is? He seems to be in most of them. I don't know exactly. Let's see. Is that him? The American Communist Party. Organizational chart? Oh, it doesn't say. It doesn't say. Anyway, so maybe we'll watch Real Communism tomorrow for Socialism Saturday. I'll pick out a few good videos. I really do want to see how they feel about the elections. I think that would be interesting. And we'll see what's what. But guys, that'll be tomorrow on my main channel, youtube.com/activelyanwoke. If you're watching on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, Gitter, any of the other platforms, you can stay right where you are. I'm not messing around with multiple channels on all those platforms, only on YouTube. And is he the one who compared Tim Pool's music to Nickelback? Nickelback is better than Tim Pool. I'm sorry. That's an awful comparison. Nickelback is way more catchy. I'm sorry. I don't mean to shit. Like, I've said it a million times. I like that he's making music. I just don't like his particular music. Yes, real communism has never been tried. Maybe we'll learn about real communism tomorrow for Socialism Saturday. All right, guys, that's all I've got. Happy Friday. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you soon.